Now won't you listen, dearie, while I say, how can
Hey YouTube, what's up? It's me, Amaxter. We're back with episode 20 of Behind the Mod. For this episode, we have BluSunrize. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, so you've made, I guess, Witching Gadgets, Traveler's Gear, and I guess your most notable mod now is Immersive Engineering. So when did you get into modding, and how did that happen?
Well, I got into modding, I guess, around the same time a lot of people did, at the end of 1.2, at the start of 1.4, roughly. Basically, when modding got a lot more viable due to the creation of mod packs back in the day, very much the Technic packs and TechIt. Those got me interested in mods and playing with them. And basically, at the end of 1.2's life cycle, I decided that it can't be that difficult, so I decided to give it a shot. Didn't go too well at the start, but I learned, and in 1.4.7 I started actually making progress towards it, thanks to Minecraft Forge being a thing and having very good tutorials at the start to work with, and yeah, it developed from there.
So earlier on, were you kind of making smaller mods?
Yeah, not necessarily smaller, but more unreleased and completely unaccounted for. Like, I have a bunch of projects that were never released that have stayed in the depths of my hard drives, and that's probably for the better because they were shoddily written.
Huh. Well, I guess now you moved on. I guess, which was first, Traveler's Gear or Witching Gadgets?
Witching Gadgets was first. Traveler's
yeah.
Gear evolved
And
along with it.
So Witching Gadgets is kind of the Stormcraft add-on you worked on. Where did the inspiration for that come from?
It started as a more fairy tale based add-on. Actually, at the time I was starting to develop it. I was also very much into reading a graphic novel called the Fable series. People might know it from The Wolf Among Us.
The Telltale
that video
series?
game
Yeah.
is based on the graphic novels, and so I kind of based it off of that at the start, which was basically a bunch of items from fairy tale literature. But it very quickly just developed into magical utilities after I realized there was a lot of stuff that I'd want in Thaumcraft that wouldn't fit the initial theme I was going for.
And I guess you've, kind of, like you mentioned, it kind of ties into a Traveler's Gear with this kind of Baubles add-on that I guess was an RPG inventory API of sorts.
Yeah, Traveler's Gear developed roughly at the same time and initially independent, because Traveler's Gear was supposed to be actually more of an RPG mod in general. Traveler's RPG was its original name, and it was supposed to have dynamic armor and stuff you'd find in dungeons and things, including that extended inventory. And eventually I just decided to cut it down to the inventory and make it more of a dependency system. And then, because I was doing Witching Gadgets at the same time, I figured I might as well integrate the two to give both of them a bit more exposure.
And I guess with you're making these kind of RPG or magic themed add-ons or I guess smaller mods of sorts, like APIs, and then you work on this thing called Immersive Engineering, which is a, I guess, more ambitious tech mod. How did that happen?
Well, it's good to keep diverse. I should probably point out at that point that I haven't just done magic mods. I have other lot less known projects that I have done. And my initial project that got me into modding was a high-tech mod. It just never got into release. So it's not very difficult to make the switch there, because in code, it's obviously all the same. And the change of style wasn't hard for me either, because I'd never been a die-hard magic or tech mod user. So it was easy for me to just switch between the two of them. And what drew me to IE was that it somewhat fit the style of Thaumcraft in a way, or it sort of sourced from similar ideals and similar art style, obviously also due to sharing an artist.
Yeah, I think I definitely noticed that, and I think like when the community saw immersive engineering for the first time on Forgecraft or Direwolf, there was a lot of hype built around that, with kind of due to the really nice and slick presentation and the whole realism-inspired theme. What was that like to kind of be part of?
Um, yeah, I guess that made it easier and made it more interesting to work with actually, because it was a definite break from from existing tech mods that we had at the time, and that made the appeal of working on it, because I didn't just want to do another buildcraft, another thermal expansion. I wanted something that was unique and different, and IE definitely had that outlook. So that was one of the reasons to go for it.
Huh. And I guess IE is really known for like the realism and steampunk theme. Where did those ideas come from?
Well, it didn't originate with me. Like, this is something people occasionally fail to see. Immersive engineering was sourced by Mr. Damon Hazard, who came up with the initial concept, all the artwork, and a lot of the models. And he developed those as models without having anyone to do the code for him, just out of fun. And I approached him and said, "Hey, you want to actually make this a project? Because I'd be interested in writing that."
So were
So
you were you kind of drawn by just like how how cool this concept was, and you I guess had the technical means to make it happen?
yeah, basically, I saw it and I figured this could be a nice difference to the tech mods. And at the start, I was very much thinking that it probably wouldn't appeal to too many people because it looked old timey, which granted, that was the charm of it. But we immediately got into discussing it and said, we want multi-block machines and we want it to be expensive and not as cheap as current tech mods. And we immediately realized that balance would probably not appeal to a lot of people. So it initially very much started as a we're doing this for us project. But turns out people actually liked it.
Yeah, well, I remember when you unveiled it first, like, there were some developer builds, but people were so excited that I think at one point someone tried to put it on CurseForge or something. There was a whole lot of stuff happening there. What do you think
Yeah,
of,
that wasn't good.
yeah, but what do you think of people, for better or worse, so excited about IE? I guess,
Well, it's definitely something I didn't account for at the start. Like, when I started developing it, I had no idea it would blow up to be as big as it is now. I initially didn't even think of the possibility of getting it onto Forgecraft, even though Mr. Hazard at that point was already a Forgecraft member. But when it first took off and people started really enjoying it and started asking for more and actually, well, used different means to get builds of the mod, it really showed how much people were interested in this project, and that's definitely served as a great motivation.
yeah, I mean, I think from a conceptual and just technically how it works, immersive engineering is such like an interesting mod, especially if you look at it in motion compared to other tech mods. Like you look at industrial craft or even buildcraft, which is known for being fairly dynamic. We're really used to that look, but then you look at immersive engineering, and it almost has this like magic mod, like Thaumcraft or Witchery sense of animation about it, like the press, the crusher, just the water wheel, all those animations. Was that, I guess, what was it like to bring all those concepts to life, in the game?
It was an experience. It was not very new to me, I guess, because I before also focused a lot on making my projects look pretty. But thanks to Mr. Hazard, I now actually had the possibility to do so a lot easier because his artistic talent greatly outweighs mine. So he gave me some amazing models, and all I had to do is basically put them in and make them work and make them spin a bit. It was not very hard, I guess, because I'd honed my skills in terms of 3D implementation before. But I guess that's also a great motivator to have an artist that can provide such beauty and then have that in game and see people get very excited about it.
Yeah, well, I know like you mentioned, Damien Hazard had all this concept stuff figured out, but I guess what was it like what did you kind of have to fill in? Like did he have recipes and balance planned out? Like how did
No,
that progress?
that developed quite dynamically. Um, IE never really had a sort of roadmap, and it still really doesn't. It started out with the idea of, well, we want wires, and then we kind of took it from there, and we very quickly asserted that we wanted different power generation, so nothing coal-based, for instance, and we wanted different looks to it, like the wires. But apart from that, it always develops in a sort of dynamic basis where either Hazard comes up with a cool idea, makes a model, and presents it, and I go, yeah, sure, we'll put that in. Or I come up with an idea and I ask him if he can model it, and he does, and we put it in. There's never a concrete plan for it, and it all develops in flux. So after we've have a model and after it's implemented, I then go, oh, right, this still needs a recipe, doesn't it? And I try to come up with one or two of them. I ask him about his opinion, and we mull it over a bit. And yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I think lots of, I think the best mods we see, this is not an exclusive statement, but, lots of the best mods that we see tend to be collaboration efforts, I think, I guess, or just lots of the mods that wow people, that someone can just look at and say, whoa, like, the Aether or, what we're talking about, IE, they have to be, these big team-based efforts. So you mentioned, how you work together. Was this your first time kind of working not alone on a mod?
Yeah, absolutely. I have never done any collaborations before that, so I actually got very lucky that Has and Me clicked on that level, and very quickly discovered that we could work along quite well because we're of a similar mindset when it comes to work. And it still is a sort of solo project for the both of us because we work in entirely different fields, because he doesn't know anything about code work in that regard. He couldn't expend the code work, and I could not reach his skill in modeling and texturing. So it's still a sort of solo project for the two of us, and we don't have to worry about really interfering with each other. The only thing we do see is obviously where we work together and it actually harmonizes. There's no negative effects to it, which is definitely a great help.
Right.
I will say, though, that this has also been the first project where I've gotten immense support from the community, off of GitHub, off of issue reports, of people submitting pull requests and basically fixing what I broke. And it's incredibly nice to have people invested into a project they aren't officially part of, yet still have the time and the motivation to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I think mods on GitHub, to varying degrees of open source, whatever they are, just the idea that people can interact, whether it be through issues or through suggestions or whatever, really does give a whole kind of new dynamic, not in the gameplay sense, but just in the development sense, nature to those mods, which is really cool. And I guess going forward with that community perspective, what is it, obviously, like we've talked about, immersive engineering is not your ordinary tech mod, balance and aesthetically wise. So has there been any friction, or just like, have there been any people who, you haven't agreed with, who have said, oh, you should do this or X or Y?
Yes, of course. I think you get that with every project where people are unhappy with design decisions, with balance, with all of that. Stuff like that always happens because for every, 10 people that like it, there'll always be one that doesn't. And as a project grows, obviously you get a lot more endorsement, but you also get a lot more negative voices. And sadly, those are usually the very vocal minority. So while you do get a lot of people saying, I really enjoy your work and I'm really happy that you're doing the work you do, the people that say this is shit are usually a lot louder, which can get demotivating at points, but it's not something that I actually get affected by, because I usually just shrug it off under, well, if they don't like it, they don't have to play with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, well, yes, you do get people not agreeing, and sometimes you do get people saying, hey, this is unbalanced, I don't like this, and at certain points I actually go, they're right, this is unbalanced, this is not good, so we fix it. And the people that are just non-constructive about it, I usually just ignore them.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it, because we do live in a community, for all the good it has, where, well, I guess like most communities, the annoying people can rise to the top. But I guess it's important to keep the integrity of your vision in general, and just but yeah, good to hear that you have that approach to that. I guess going to back to gameplay, with documentation, you have the engineer's manual, which is not very common. Another thing that's not very common for tech mods to have. It's more of a thing that you expect to see in the Thaumonomicon or the Lexica Britannia, or the Witchery books. It's not something we see too often in tech mods. So was that further kind of the part of the Thaumcraft, or just your inspiration from working on non-tech stuff, or where did that decision come from?
Yeah, that definitely sourced in Thaumcraft, because actually one of the most fun I had in writing a Thaumcraft add-on was doing custom documentation for it and coming up with entries, especially with the Thaumonomicon being a bit more lore-based and usually having a paragraph of how, I guess, in-world this item came to be or who invented this. That's always something that I've found very, very appealing about it, because it gave some depth to a mod. Instead of just saying, here's a machine, this is what it does, you actually had a sort of segment saying, this was invented by, I don't know, some technician who came before you, and he needed a machine for that. And I guess that aspect definitely encouraged me to do in-game documentation. On the other hand, I also don't like wikis, and especially not how poorly maintained some of them are and how much false information they still spread, because mods change and no one bothers to update the wiki.
True.
So to avoid that, I figured my in-game documentation should always be the one that's up to date. And if anyone ever has a question as to which is the most accurate description, it's always the one I give and not the one that's been done by a third party.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that with some, like, especially older mods. You'll look up a YouTube tutorial or whatever, and already it's kind of a hassle to, go out of game. But then, you'll see an out-of-date tutorial that's talking about content that, has really changed a lot. So I guess you kind of wanted to integrate that so that you're almost forced to kind of maintain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a neat approach to it. You also have lots of personality. Just not only that, you have the Clippy thing in the documentation, and just the
that started as a really stupid joke, and I just left it in because, I don't know, I got entertainment from it.
Yeah, you have that, and just in general, the whole mod has this definite, I guess, personal feel about it. I guess, why do you think that is?
I have a very dry and stupid sense of humor, and I like to incorporate that as much as I can. I don't know. I guess I enjoy it when projects are filled with the life of their creator. I'm a sucker for Easter eggs in video games, for developers putting themselves into it somewhat, and even just making references to other games inside their game. That's always been a thing that I've found very enjoyable, and has been something that I've always been happy to discover when I go into a game and I go, oh, I get that reference. That's about that other game. And can't really come up with an example right now, but I try to do the same. So as people will hopefully have noticed, most of the subtitles, for instance, of the manual entries are references to something. Basically, every single achievement is a reference to something. And I try to keep with that trend in order to give people who either share that kind of interest and humor, or even just people who discover it by accident because they have played the other games, that just like little feel of, oh, I get that joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really fun. Not just Easter eggs, but like just the whole approach to the design, but also, that stuff that people see and they might or might not get, but it really does, I think, kind of make a difference. Not functionally, but just kind of does give the mod definitely its own charm, I guess. That word might be overused though. But yeah, I do, we've talked about how it's such a unique mod. What mods do you see kind of immersive engineering playing best with, aside from stuff like Thaumcraft?
Well, You also already took one away. That would definitely be Thorncraft because
Making it challenging.
their art styles just match. I'd say Railcraft, which currently sadly is not updated to a current version of Minecraft. If you're still in 1.7, obviously Railcraft, definitely. I don't know. I've never been one for big kitchen sink mod packs, so I usually try to keep it small. But I can see IE work with the, I guess, a bit more naturalist magic mods. I can see it working with Britannia where required, and I can see it just working well with vanilla, I guess, because I usually try not to balance around other mods too much. There are obviously compat modules for a lot of things to support, for instance, the alloys from the COFH mods and stuff. But usually I just try to, if any balances around vanilla. So yeah, I'd say other mods that just enhance the vanilla experience probably go along well with it. So Tinker's Construct is probably a great example for that.
Oh yeah, I think like it definitely is a quality of life type thing, or just also like you said, natural magic, or just natural anything. But that design where obviously immersive engineering is not the type of mod that I'm gonna throw into a kitchen sink pack or anyone, because it really honestly wouldn't make much sense there. Because I don't
You'd be surprised how many people put it in kitchen sink packs.
But yeah, that makes me sad because I'm just thinking, like, I can't imagine many people using a kitchen sink pack. That's not because it's not a cool mod, but it's because, the balance, first of all, is so different that everyone's just going to be like, oh, why would I do that when I can just make one block that does everything or whatever? Do you kind of hope to see more packs that, I guess, are maybe lighter on mods or maybe don't have the mods, that you see typically in kitchen sink packs, but have immersive engineering? Like, have you seen any cool examples of that?
Yeah, I enjoy mods that I enjoy mod packs that highlight mods that aren't mainstream. So this is going to be completely advertising, but there's the For the Love of Adventure packs, which are actually started as like sub-server packs for a streamer, but they focus on highlighting a bit more mods that are a bit underused. For instance, Abyssal Crafts in there, which it's different, I'll give it that, but it makes for an interesting and a bit more challenging experience. More Cards is definitely a mod that also goes along great with IE because it has specific IE compat. And I guess one of the things I did not enjoy about IE's role as it developed is how it turned into a fancy-looking energy converter, especially for the Infinity series of packs, where it was used for nothing else but converting between industrial craft and redstone flux stuff.
Yeah.
And that just, I guess it put a bit of damper on it, and I didn't enjoy too much, but I've also ranted entirely too much about those mod packs, so I'll spare you that. But yeah, I enjoy it if it's different, if it still has the obvious popular mods like Tinker's Construct, because personally I'm a great fan of it. But if it doesn't just mismatch a bunch of stuff that really doesn't belong together.
Yeah, I think like not only, mind tweaking, like I think sometimes we have this attitude that, you can mind tweak a mod to basically change it. Like you can, but like at the same time, mod choice I think does matter. And no matter how much effort you put in a kitchen sink pack, you have to be aware of the content. And I think some mods, like the one we're talking about, kind of do probably work better in their own kind of special thing, in their own, I guess, focus packs. Shifting gears, I guess, to more technical stuff. You've been, I guess, you ported IE to 1.8. What was that like?
Tedious for the most part, because 1.8 changed a lot of things, and I guess a lot of people made the switch a lot easier than I did, because at the time I was also getting a bit burnt out on development, so I didn't put a lot of hours into it each day, simply to keep myself from entirely burning out and losing interest in the project. So I started moving very late into the process, after a lot of major mods had already pulled pulled over. And I decided that it would be the best to effectively rewrite the base code of IE. So a lot of the implementation stuff stayed in. A lot of the tile entities remained the same in their functionality, but the basic blocks that support them and how the core of it all worked, I rewrote all of that to accommodate for the new block state system, the new properties, and all the new stuff basically that Mojang introduced. And that broke a lot of stuff for a lot of people. And I figured it would be easier to just rewrite the base and build up from there again. And turns out it was actually a lot of work, and I did not account for it to be. And yeah, I don't know. It was tricky. It was difficult. I'm happy I did it though, because it also improved IE's code base by quite a lot. It's one of the things that I do too little, that I go back and chuck out code that's terrible and rewrite it. So there's still a lot of old fragments left that are just poorly written, but I don't get around to fixing them. And with 1.8, thankfully, I managed to root out a lot of them.
Yeah.
The moves to 1.9 and 1.10 have been a lot smoother so far. 1.9.4 is currently in development, with 1.10 probably being no different. As far as I hope, I should be able to have a version that works between the two of them very easily. And if everything goes to plan, that should be around in the next weeks.
Yeah, I think lots of modders we've seen, like Bonnie with Ticker's Construct, have not only taken the opportunity to clean up their code base, but they've also kind of changed the balance and just general things about their mod that they maybe saw abused or didn't see used the way they wanted in 1.7 or earlier versions. They've kind of changing that. Have you experienced any of that with IE?
Absolutely. I've made that a definite thing to change balance over time anyway, because when we started in 1.7, IE was just entirely too expensive, especially with steel costs on the arc furnace, for instance. That changed later into the 1.7 development cycle. And with 1.8, it's basically built in from the start. But 1.8 has also slowly been adjusting the balance. So the metal press has got a lot more prominent of a role. It now has wires being crafted with more crafting steps, but at cheaper material costs, and also gotten a bit more nicer and automatable. So yeah, it's not a immediate balance change, because I'm bad at finding a starting balance that works out, but I do try to gradually adjust the balance as I go along with it.
Yeah, I think that's important because, mods kind of have to evolve as I guess the game evolves. What's it been like, though? Like you mentioned, you're working on the 1.9.4 port, though it must be kind of, 1.9.4 and 1.10.2 are basically the same thing for modders, thankfully. It's going to be kind of a gut punch, going to 1.8, and then like, oh, sorry, everyone's on 1.9. Is that kind of frustrating in any sense? Like the idea, because I guess as a community, we've kind of skipped 1.8, so is it, I guess, what's it like to kind of have to basically catch up twice?
It's frustrating, definitely. Noticeably so, where I keep noticing myself not being entirely dedicated to IE anymore. And this is not a new thing. I think a lot of modders, and generally just a lot of people working on projects, have that, where they need to take a break from it and work on a different hobby just to keep themselves fresh on it. But yeah, I hit 1.8.9 entirely too late, and my own stupidity and thick-headedness kind of prevented me from moving to 1.9 after that immediately. So once again, I waited too long, and now I'm moving into 1.9.4 as 1.10 is already out. The lucky thing is that, as you said, the versions are very, very similar to each other. So I should be able to maintain 1.9 and 1.10 at the same time, which is probably not going to be too relevant because a lot of people are already moving to 1.10 anyway. So I might as well just go for 1.10. But I figured just for legacy reasons, I might as well put a 1.9 version out there for the people that are still trading behind as well.
Yeah, I think it is nice that Mojang's doing these smaller updates. Like 110 is essentially 195, maybe not content-wise, but I think in this, but from a technical sense, that's what it seems like. I guess, but talking about having fatigue sometimes, I don't know if you know the oatmeal, like Matthew Inman. I think he did something about recently about how creativity is like breathing, and where like creative people kind of they have to be creative, but at the same time, you also gotta exhale and inhale. So, has it been? Have you kind of been trying to, I guess, maybe obviously you're working on IE, but have you been trying to at the same time maybe not let it take over your life?
Yes, definitely. One of the things that's, I'm sure that's not just a specific problem for me. I do get tired of projects, and thankfully I've avoided that with IE so far. But that's one of the reasons why Witching Gadgets is not in active development anymore. It's because throughout 1.7.10, throughout me developing Witching Gadget as well as playing with it and playing with Thorncraft so much, I burnt myself out on Thorncraft really, really badly, that I didn't have the motivation to play it anymore nor develop it. So that's why that mod effectively came to a standstill. IE has been a lot nicer to me in that regard in terms of avoiding that, thanks to the fact that it's been a lot slower development cycle. It's not something I have to work on my own. It's something that's timed, also due to the fact that I do have situations where I approach Hazard and tell him, I need a model for this. And he goes, yeah, sure, but that will take me a few days. And I can go, that's fine. That gives me a bit of break time. So that's perfectly fine for me. And yeah, I managed to find a decent rhythm of keeping myself fresh by just taking a good 2 weeks break from IE, and to the point where I actively ignore my GitHub and issue reports that come in and effectively just respond to them with, I'm currently on break. I'll be back to you guys in like 2 weeks. It's definitely helping a lot, and that's definitely also keeping me focused on the project by allowing me to lose focus of it for a bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things the community is going a lot better at is the whole classic update please thing, like update to 110, update to 19, whatever. I think most reasonable people understand that modders, like everyone, they have lives, and sometimes they don't want to dedicate their life completely to a mod during certain times. So it's good to kind of, I think, yeah, I guess do you think that people are being good about, I guess, not being too annoying about bugging you while you're relaxing or just trying to get away from it?
I feel like it's a 50-50 split, but thankfully it's not. That's where the vocal minorities actually outweighing again, where well, obviously people who want the update will be very, very demanding and more often than not, being unfriendly about it. But also, thankfully, I've gotten to the point where I'm very good at ignoring those kinds of people.
Yeah, that's an important skill.
Yeah, and the people whose opinion I actually care about have been very supportive of the whole matter and have been telling me to just take it easy and work at my own pace. And that's definitely been working. So yes, I do realize this is hard for a lot of people to accept, but even the modders that don't have a lot of work or a job or anything that occupies their time, even those kinds of modders like myself do not want to dedicate their entire life to a single project, because that just gets boring and irritating really, really quickly.
Well, yeah, then you start to become the mod. That should be a whole new
Yeah.
show. But yeah, that's definitely understandable. I guess so. Yeah, you have this 110 or 19, 110 port going. How's that been treating you? I guess. What's it looking like?
It looked shockingly bad at the start, because when I first chucked it into the development environment, it told me it had over 3,000 errors.
Oof.
So that wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But thankfully, for one, Bonnie back in the day made a update script for 1.9, which allowed 1.8 to 1.9 updates very quickly. That is not fully up to date anymore, but it still took a load of work off my shoulders. Since then, it's been a lot of fixing of the JSON files, because their format obviously changed quite a bit. Sadly, the rendering system was impacted once again, to the point where I still haven't fully fixed it. I I guess the fancy items in IE, like the chemical thrower, the drill, the revolver, all of that stuff, had to get an overhaul in how it's rendered, simply because with the two hands being implemented, all the default renderings, all the default rotations changed.
Mm-hmm.
But all that stuff's in. I currently have a running version of it, and I'm now doing basically feature debugging, which is going through everything that the mod can do and checking if it still works. Which, yeah, it's slow, it's tedious, and you just get to a point where you skip something, and then you think, oh, I've already fixed that, and you go back to it and you realize you haven't fixed it. So I thought, for instance, I'd fixed all the complex rendered items, and then I started it today and realized this looks off. And it just, I think it was 3 sizes too big, effectively. It was completely eclipsing the player's head. It's not how it's supposed to look like. And yeah, you just get lost in the amount of fixes you have to do. But thankfully, I've been biting through it, and yeah, it's not as much of a problem as 1.7.2.1.8 was. It's definitely a nicer way of updating.
Yeah, I noticed, like, it's funny, kind of, obviously your mod and Aslan or Stormcraft have both been obviously having difficulties because I think not only are they big mods, but also they do so much fancy stuff with the rendering and just, obviously player hands, because, the whole dual wielding thing, it looks like both of those mods have kind of been badly affected by the 1.9 update, but good to hear that it's going well.
Yeah, maybe to address that, I can't say entirely what Azunor's rendering problem is. Last I heard, it was something related to particles, but I'm not sure. But he's also just incredibly busy currently, so he doesn't get to put much work into Thorncraft, sadly. So I myself am one of the people who's definitely missing it, and I hope it comes back at some point. But I also know how much time goes into this, and people who do have a life can't dedicate everything to modding.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess post 1.10, after you port this, get a good port going, where do you see IE going in the future?
I think it's probably just gonna keep going the same way it has been going. More feature development, hopefully, by just coming up with new ideas. There's a few things in the pipeline that I can't really talk about right now. But basically, Hazard has already finished a new model that people might have even seen on his Twitter, and it just continues roughly at the same pace that it used to. I'm not sure if I'll start other projects or resume other projects after I have IE back to a working build. In fact, I'll probably be happy when I have it out and can instead focus on just bug fixing and getting a bit more break time.
So I guess,
but role-wise, it shouldn't change. It'll probably stay the same tech mod as it is currently, and just slowly creep along and expand in new features.
Cool. So do you see any so I guess, is it just IE from here on, or do you have any ideas bouncing around in your head for other stuff?
Well, it's IE as it is. There's things that I definitely want in, and that I have concrete ideas for and how to make them as well. There are things that I also want in, and I have no idea how I'm going to handle them yet, because ever since 1.7, there's always been the idea of having that nuclear reactor, and I still have no idea how I'm going to write it and how exactly it's going to function in the end and everything. People have been asking for an automated farming system, which I still haven't come up with a satisfying idea as to how I want it to look or how I want it to function. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of work to be done, but thankfully none of it is as urgent as the update.
Well, that sounds good. Good to hear that you're focused on the update for now, and that there's some, I guess, cool kind of content stuff to, help the mod come into its own. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's really been nice having you on. And I guess, do you have any more closing thoughts?
Well, for one, it's been a pleasure being on. Thank you very much for having me. And I guess closing thoughts, I'm happy as long as the community enjoys it. I'm grateful for all the feedback that we get. It's great to see how many people support all the work we do, and the community as it is right now is on a great way, and I hope that it keeps going for a long time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all of you guys for watching this, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.